Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude for the South African chairship for the arrangement of this representative summit of the BRICS Plus outreach. This format of communication is of utmost importance. It offers us a great opportunity to discuss in substance the relevant topics of mutual interest with those countries who largely share the attitudes of the five with the like-minded states. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you, dear friends. We all stand for the building of a new multipolar world order, a one that is truly balanced and takes into account the sovereign interests of as many nations as possible, and opens possibilities for implementation of various development models while making it possible to preserve national cultures and identities and traditions. Let me stress, BRICS is not competing with anyone and is not opposing itself to anyone, but it's also obvious that this objective process, the process of emerging of a new world order, still has fierce opponents who try to slow down this process, to contain the emergence of new independent centers of development in the world. The countries of the so-called Golden Billion are doing everything in order to preserve the previous unipolar world order. They are comfortable with it. It benefits them. They try to substitute the world order by the rules-based order, although no one has seen these rules. And they use these rules for their narrow interests, and they adjust them to fit their political interests at any time in accordance with the interests of certain states. In effect, it is the same colonialism in a new package. By the way, it doesn't look so good, and modern-day colonizators, under the guise of benign mottos of human rights and so on, try to resolve their problems at someone else's extent by pumping out resources of other countries. The president of Brazil mentioned the debt burden of developing countries. Well, of course, on the one hand, they pump out huge volumes of resources, and on the other hand, they create a sort of credit relations that paying these loans off is almost impossible, and it looks not like loans but as contributions. The world order is threatened by the radical neoliberalism imposed by some countries that is aimed at eliminating traditional values that matter for all of us. I'm talking about the value of family, respect for national and religious traditions. They try to do so to serve their own interests, and some countries even justify extremism, xenophobia, and connive with terrorists. The global majority, represented by countries present here, is getting increasingly tired of all sorts of pressure or manipulations. But it is ready for equal and mutually respectful cooperation. That is the attitude taken by the BRICS countries. That's how we treat the development of multifaceted relations with many countries present here and other interested countries on the regional and global basis, including such regional structures as CIS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Caribbean countries, the Gulf countries. Bearing in mind that most African countries participate in today's event, today BRICS focus is on Africa. And we in Russia can only welcome it. We believe it is right, especially so as it is the Republic of South Africa that holds the chairship. Many dear friends, we met with many of you quite recently in St. Petersburg at the second Russia-Africa summit, where we held constructive discussions. In St. Petersburg, we reaffirmed that Russia and Africa have ever stronger friendly ties and mutually beneficial relations. The foundation for these relations was laid in the times when the African continent was struggling for its independence. We value that African countries have a friendly attitude to the Russian country, and in its turn Russia is interested in further deepening its multifaceted ties with the African continent. We will actively promote these ties, translate them in practical cooperation in various fields. Our particular focus lies on providing African countries and the world market with grain and fertilizers. We have all opportunities to make our contribution to the global efforts to resolve the hunger problem and not to allow the food crisis. So we can only welcome that for the second year in a row we have record crop yields, and as I already mentioned, in the coming months as a priority assistance project we'll allocate 25 to 50 tons of grain to African countries, and we'll ship it free of charge. That's what we mentioned in St. Petersburg. Right now we are concluding negotiations with our African countries on these issues. We are doing so despite the obstacles created by others, in particular illegitimate sanctions imposed against our exports that complicate insurance and settlement processes. Our African friends can rest assured that Russia will always remain a reliable food supply and will continue to support the countries most in need. Russia takes a responsible attitude to its obligations in terms of energy exports. Largely, these exports are oriented on the emerging markets. Russian raw materials and fuels make it possible for the friendly countries, including African countries, to contain price rises and enhance agricultural and industrial production, thus strengthening their energy security and economic resilience. According to some estimates, by 2050, world's population will rise by 1.7 billion people, and the energy supply will rise by 22%. So it's obvious that for the foreseeable future, there is no alternative to coal or hydrocarbons, meaning that the energy transition that is necessary, the energy transition to low-emission economy, should take place in a gradual and balanced manner. It should be well calculated, taking into account national peculiarities and possibilities of the respective countries. By the way, some countries are already facing the effects of the efforts of the mistakes they committed when planning this energy transition, and problem is exacerbating. We see a solution in effective use of all energy resources while implementing clean technologies, and obviously, together with our BRICS partners, we stand for strengthening the equal and technological cooperation in such fields as the use of renewable energy sources and in other important areas, including development of new types of atomic reactors, promotion of hydrogen technologies, and so on. By the way, in these fields, Africa is our priority partner. Currently, in different fields, we are working on about 30 projects with participation of Russia. In 16 states, we are operating in a very active manner. In Egypt, for example, Rosatom is working on construction of Daba, a nuclear power plant, and the total capacity of our energy projects amounts to 3.6 gigawatt. Over the past 2 years, there has been an increase by 2.6% of the exports of Russian raw materials, petrol products, and liquefied natural gas. 2.6% rise. The exports of food, energy resources, cooperation in other economic fields, as well as in the fields of culture, education, sports. All of these applies not only to Africa, but also to other regions, and naturally to the countries invited for the BRICS outreach countries.
We will build constructive win-win relations with everyone. We will enhance partnership, and our country has a lot to offer. In this regard, let me note that next year, Russia will assume BRICS chairship, and upon instruction of our colleagues, we will ensure the working conditions and the work with the countries that cooperate with us within the BRICS Plus and BRICS outreach formats. Dear colleagues, by way of concluding, I'm confident that the current meeting would be very useful. It will help bolster friendly relations between the BRICS 5 countries. But next year, there will be an increasing number of new members. It will help galvanize cooperation on various tracks. Thank you for your attention.